All
All
right. Well,
right.
I just got your top 10 list. And
Okay.
yeah, so why, I can imagine why you like yourself. Is this numbered 1 through 10, you being your favorite?
Yeah, and it's actually from a very it's as hard as it may be to believe, it's a very unbiased thing for me. I kind of gauged it from a perspective of skill set. And as I progressed through the industry, the reason that I put myself up there is because I was blessed to learn through myself all the different ways to be versatile. And when I started thinking, because I haven't had that question before, when I started thinking about in terms of who would be on a top list of Flint, I started to think from a production standpoint, from a songwriting standpoint, but also from just an overall versatility space. And being that I'm able to be in the composer space and the producer space and the artist space, I just thought it was a good way to just show off the versatility of Flint versus one specific area.
Because you are so versatile. Like, what would I put down as your title? Because you're a composer, you're also a performer, or would you want all of those titles?
I mean, you don't necessarily have to put them all, but I think the most important would probably be, just the combination of artist, producer, composer, so that they understand. For me, it was always when we got out of Flint, when I turned 15, I didn't know a lot of things about versatility, but once we got out, I was able to know it because I saw it. So I think with kids that come from Flint and not even just kids, but adults as well who haven't kind of made that leap to really see what is possible. Those titles, more than like a braggadocious pride thing, show them, like you don't have to be in this one box. You can actually, it actually serves you better and others, better to be a multiplicity of things.
Yeah, right on. I tell my students that as a journalist, you can't just write. You have to shoot video, you have to record audio, etc. You have to be a one-person band machine, so to speak. So, can you talk a little bit about being born in Flint, growing up, and then moving to Madison Heights. And then I was reading up on you on MLive on several stories, and it's such a captivating narrative you have. And now you're in LA, and I was like reading it. I'm like, he's not in Michigan. He's in a different time zone. So if you could share your background with me.
Absolutely. So, of course, born and raised in Flint, Michigan. My earliest memory of music and kind of like really getting excited about it was in our church. It belonged to my grandfather and my grandmother, and that was on Clio Road, True Light Holiness Church. And I would always play the drums after my parents bought the church from my grandparents when they started to, it started to be too much of a lift and a load for them. So I would always have to be up there with my father while he was, preparing and working on things. He was like a do it all on that side of things. So I just found myself always chilling in the sanctuary. And so I started to play the drums one day, and really, in all honesty, what pushed me towards music and especially the drum side is that 6 in the morning, I was always waking up and hearing the Flint Northern Band. So like this was my alarm clock. This was kind of like my beat and my rhythmic life pattern to wake up and hear the Flint Northern Band. So once I started to play in church, my grandmother would be on the piano. We became like this dynamic duo. And then there was a point, I believe, when I turned 9, where I noticed my dad didn't have anyone to play when he would do like the ad libs, and we would visit other churches, and I would always see like when the pastor really got into it, they would have someone on the organ just really killing it and kind of accenting and responding to what the preacher was doing. So I went over there and gave it what I could, and that really developed into like this musical passion to keep searching for what I could do. The Madison Heights move was a culture shock for me because I went from like, potentially pretty much 99% black to less than 1% black. And it took me a second to adjust because I didn't understand why we would be pulled at that time, right? I'm going into high school. I'm about to drive. I'm about to start dating. All the things that you look forward to. I was very, skilled in basketball, so I was supposed to play at Flint Southwestern, and I had made it through and got accepted into the summer league, everything. So I was crushed, but what I learned when we moved to Madison Heights was language in a really awesome way. I learned literary terms, double entendres and alliteration, assonance, and I really understood the language and how I could pair it with my gift and use it to tell my story and speak and create these pieces that people could enjoy, but also these pieces that maybe someone else could see a different way than what they had seen before. And around school, I got super popular for basketball, but I also got popular for my writing, and so I would sell CDs throughout the hallways, $10 a pop, come home with an easy, $1,000, and that began to like ignite the entrepreneur in me, and I was like, okay, this is not only a gift, but this is also a service that people need because they're flocking to it. So um Madison Heights was a tricky one at first, but it was, oh, my camera just died. Let me switch here. But it was just really telling. And what I learned also while we were in Madison Heights is we were in this class and I noticed that Flint was in our book. The story of it being the vehicle city before Detroit became the motor city, all these things. And I was so excited and I felt a sense of home. And uh, I felt like we had tremendous value because the place that I had left now was in front of me, and all my other peers could see that this place was important, that I was always Flint, 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 right? It became really important. And there was a sadness mixed with that as well, because I was like, well, why aren't we learning this where I came from very early on so that we know who we are and our value and our story so that we aren't lost. So it was a double edged sword in that of it really showing my white friends that, hey, where I come from is not all drugs and everything else that's painted in the media, but it was also like I would have really liked to learn this where I came from.
So where did you go to grade school and middle school?
I went to Anderson Elementary. Then I transitioned to Longfellow for sixth grade, and then seventh and eighth grade I went to Flint Southwestern, which was 7 through 12 at that time.
Okay, so you didn't go to Flint Northern or Flint Southwestern because you're of the move to Madison Heights.
Yeah, well, I went to Southwestern for seventh and eighth grade.
Oh, okay, okay. But then you moved in ninth
Right,
grade.
right.
Okay, so I that's really interesting to me that you were influenced by the Flint Northern band. Like, what time would they start practicing? And that was in middle school, you say,
Yeah,
or said?
that was pretty much from elementary. I mean, from even before the
Oh,
earliest
okay.
memory, maybe 6 or 7, I would just always hear them 6 a.m., 5:45. I knew they were going to be playing. And then as I progressed, I started to copy, the patterns of what they were doing on the drum side. And then we started to go to the competitions at Wood Stadium. Then I would, like really try to copy them because I felt like this was an emulation thing that could really serve me. And then while at Anderson, actually, I got to perform at Woods Stadium because with my school, Anderson, had a peace rap contest, and it was like who could make the best peace rap, and mine was like super cheesy of like, you got to devour the power of education so you and your homies won't be on probation, right? It was like, this peace rap, but I got to perform in front of thousands of people at Wood Stadium, so that was really awesome. But it all came from Northern over those years, hearing that music constantly.
Gosh, that's amazing. That it's like the drum beat of your life. Um, so take me from Madison Heights to yeah, to where you are.
Okay, so from Madison Heights, as a junior in that high school in Madison Heights, I was accepted to be a member of the All-State All-American team representing Michigan in the Junior Olympics. And then I earned a scholarship to Tiffin University. Which is in Ohio. I went to Ohio, and the summer before going to Ohio, I dislocated my shoulder, but I was kind of like building back and getting my body right. Got to the campus, I was really dynamic, and midway through the first semester, I started to lock myself in my dorm room and wouldn't let anyone in, players, coaches, roommate, anyone, because I was trying to get better at this beat making program that I had called Fruity Loops. And I was just captivated by it. And I vividly remember sitting in the sociology class, and I was like, I remember saying to my buddy, "This is my last day, bro." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "That's it. This is not where I'm supposed to be." Like, I had that moment where you kind of look at all four walls. I remember looking at all the walls, and I'm just like, "This is not. I can feel it. Like, this is not where I'm supposed to be." So, I called my parents. I remember it like yesterday, and they're like, "Hey, how's it going, son? You loving it? This and that?" I'm like, "Yeah, everything's great. I'm done. I wanna do music." And it's like, what? Right? Like, I remember getting the calls from family members I had not met yet, I didn't even know of, and "We're so disappointed in you, and you were supposed to do this, that, and the third." But I had to stick to my gun because I knew if something was strong enough to pull me away from basketball, which I had been doing since I was 5, AAU and all these tournaments and got my scholarship. If something was able to pull me from that, there was something to pay attention to in that. And the joy of it was, seeing hearing from those same people that would tell me how disappointed they were, understandably, um, seeing them on the flip side of seeing like my name on BET and all these different shows the first time I got a show, and they're like, "Oh, we're so proud. We always knew you would, I believed in you." And I'm like, "Yeah," but it was gratifying. But from there, I actually just went back to Michigan. I went right back to Michigan, started selling mixtapes and getting my music together. And then I ended up moving to Wisconsin. And then when I got to Wisconsin, I won a radio contest, 103.7 Kiss Icon contest in 2009. And what that did for me was really expose me commercially. And oddly enough, I was still homeless and living out of my car at that time. And so when I saw the contest, I'm like, "This is a Kiss station, so I know this is huge." I drove back to Michigan, got all my equipment, drove back. I had a buddy who had an extra bedroom he wasn't using. Asked him to let me use his bedroom to record the song for the contest. Sent it in. It was about 1,200 artists total that were competing. And out of those, week to week, I would go and, through the snow and everything else, put up all these flyers, vote for me, all these things. Ended up winning, and that got my record to start spinning twice a day on the radio. So like T.I.'s Dead and Gone and Blurred Lines and all these different records would go off, and mine would come on, and that was so captivating for me. And then it also allowed me to perform at Summerfest in Milwaukee, which is still in the Guinness World Records book for the largest music festival in the world. So that really got my feet wet of like, okay, this is a real thing and I can do this. If I did this with basically nothing, what could I do if I, kept at it? So leaving Wisconsin, I then had this transition of being in clinical studies, because I was always trying to find a way to make money in a legal way. And it's so, when I think about it, even talking about it right now, I'm like, wow, my aim was to get away from the drug game, because I knew that very well, and my intelligence would allow me to actually be successful at it. But now when I think about it, I still went into drugs, but it was the legal way. But I was at a clinical study, and these things are intense, right? Like you can have, some will get a placebo, some will get the real thing. You never know which one you're going to get. And then, but you get, $5,000, 10 grand, 15 grand to stay there for a couple weeks, and then you're out. So I remember vividly being at one, and this was the last one I was ever at. And I got a call from MC Light, and she told me that they were transitioning the show after I had landed some cues, and they wanted music that sounded like a movie score. And so I was like, I love that, right? Like that's one thing I was doing in my room. It was Flint Northern Band copying, and it was trying to copy the sounds I would hear in movies. Like I always loved that since a kid. So I'm like, yeah, for sure. This clinical study, by the grace of God and purpose, I brought my equipment to this study. This is the only one I had ever brought my equipment to because it was a longer stay. Now, when she said that, I'm like, yeah, no problem. I sent her some music. Within 10 minutes, she called me back. She's like, this is exactly what the CEO is looking for, right? At that moment, she's like, I'm going to call you tomorrow, play you the dialogue from the first episode, and send me what you can come up with from over the phone. And I'm like, okay, sweet. Hung up the phone, called my mom, like, Ma, I'm in this clinical study. I'll get paid next week. I want to fly to Hollywood rather than her call me. Let me just show up. And she's like, yeah, for sure. So booked the flight, called her back, and I'm like, can I just meet you at the office? And she's like, here in Hollywood? I was like, yeah. She's like, have you ever been to California? I was like, no, but can I come? You know, I'm just pushing. And so the study is so upset because it messes with their numbers. If you leave, you cannot leave a study early. You know, these are all the, you know, people in their lab coats and they're, you know, it's very serious. And I was like, that was the decision. I'm like, am I going to cut off my lifeline for, you know, to take this chance? And I'm like, yeah, of course. So I leave, go there, I show up, I score. They just throw me in an edit bay and say, all right, see you later. No direction, no anything. This is the first time I'm in Hollywood. I'm in this edit bay. I got my equipment. I did what I know how to do. That's make music, right? I'm watching the picture. I'm scoring. I'm in there for about 8 hours straight. We go into a conference room. The entire staff of DuBose Entertainment is there, CEO and everyone else. They watch the episode. No one's saying a word. I'm terrified. And then when it goes off, they all stand up and clap. And he asked me, how long are you here? I'm like, I came out for a day to just show you what I could do. And he's like, what, you got a job or something? And I was like, no, sir. If you want me to stay here, he was like, okay. So I stayed there one more day. I'm flying home. My sister calls me because she's watching Ustream. By the time I land from the flight, James DuBose, the CEO of DuBose Entertainment, is on Ustream saying he just met some new young producer. I went from submitting cues with 29 other composers to him giving me the entire thing, right? Like he gave me I'm doing theme song, next on, previously on, all 16 episodes, and that really that started everything because then they flew me out, put me in an apartment in Hollywood, and I would compose and score in the daytime, and at night Light would take me around to all the different, you know, super producers and introduce me and just, you know, show me what it was to be in Hollywood. So
So that was 2009?
that was, yep, 2009 I won. 2010 is when I flew out there from the whole clinical study transition.
And the clinical study, that was in Milwaukee.
That was in North Dakota. I would drive anywhere. That was in Fargo. That one was in Fargo, North Dakota. I would drive all over the world just
Oh my goodness. So the clinical study was for which drug? It,
oh, it was so long ago. I can't even remember what drug it was for.
yeah.
Oh no, actually, that last one, it was actually for arthritis.
Oh my gosh. And they have you stay there for several weeks to test. Oh my
You
goodness.
stay there, you live there, you eat there, you are monitored. There are, I believe, 35 to 40 blood draws a day because they got to keep, you know, getting your blood to see how it's moving through your stream. And I chose that one because I also felt like I had a bit of that arthritis when I was playing keys. So I was like, this won't hurt too bad, but I don't know how it turned out because I didn't stay past that first day. So.
Wow. Okay. So now I want to transition into flow, the concept flow. What do you think about when you hear that term?
Flow to me is language, actually, right? Like this, for me, flow tells me what you're trying to say in the way that you're saying it, right? Like cadence comes to mind when I think of flow. You know, it's like, what way are we riding this beat? What way are we moving about to tell the story? But when I think of flow, I think of smooth fluidity that's like just a driving language that's based in cadence. That's what flow is to me.
So how do you get there? How do you get to that cadence?
I think you get there through exploration, right? And you get there through spiritual authenticity. Like whatever is going on in the inside is what's going to come out. So I'm often challenged with trying to search myself deep to feel how I can put my authentic self on it, but also how I can fit in between the rhythms of what are going on in the beat, right? Like that beat is playing, and I'm trying to figure out what is the best way to maneuver around the beat so that I'm not countering what the beat is doing, but I'm amplifying what the rhythmic side of the beat is doing rather than amputating it, right? If I go against the grain, it might serve that rhythm right. Or if I go with what that rhythm is doing, it might serve it right. It's all about the language and the bounce of what we're trying to convey to the listener.
So the process begins with the beats first, and
Most of
then
the time. Yes.
most of the time, and then you start thinking of the words.
Yeah,
Is that work for
yeah,
you?
for my specific process, for me, when I make music or make a beat, that's me. I feel like the song is done. I already said what I need to say. For me, the lyrical side is really making the music for me. I don't know why it's the reverse, but when I put the music on there in that beat, that's music speaks in a way that words can't. So when I can hit a drum very hard or soft or make a snare roll, like that says what I can't really say in word form. So I feel like my lyrics are really said in the music. And then when I start to approach that thing from a lyrical standpoint, I'm just again trying to amplify rather than amputate what's there, the emotion and the feeling and I'm gonna play with words. And I haven't written a record since 2009 when I wrote that record. Now I just spit out what's in there, right? Like it just comes out, and then I may have 20 different phrases that I spit out. Now it's up to me to gauge which one is the strongest, which one is infectious, which one I call it the drugs, which one is like addicting to me that I can't get enough of and I can't get past it. And once I do get past it, I want to go back to it because it's so dope.
So what are I guess, the environmental conditions that allow you to get to that point, that creative point?
Well, total volume is a thing for me. Having a volume that like kind of engulfs the environment where there aren't sounds outside of what the music is doing, and then having an environment of peace, right? No noise helps that peace come in because I don't want to counter this with anything. Everything is an influence, right? Even if someone's in the room and you love them dearly and it's, just someone that you can't get enough of, even if they say, I don't like for people to be in the room when I'm creating, because even if they say, I really love that, that's in my subconscious now. So what if I really wanted to change that? But you saying that you love that kind of makes it biased for me to stay with that sound or that cadence or that rhythmic thing. And then if you say, the contrary, that you don't like it, what if I love it? And then that causes that human reaction of me to do something based on outside influence. So a singular focused influence is very important in the environment, because then you get the authenticity of what's really there rather than the influenced environment of something that someone else thinks or feels or whatever it is. Once I can spit it out authentically, then I can show it to people I trust and say, hey, what are your thoughts on this? What are you thinking? Whatever it is. But at least I know I got out the true nature of the authenticity. So the environment has to have no noise that's outside of the music side, and then be a place of complete peace and openness.
So, can you give me an example using one of your songs where you achieved like a great flow, or a flow you're proud of?
Absolutely. I would have to go with the Flint song that I did with my grandmother. And
Olivia Houston?
yes, Odessa
Yes.
Houston. Yes, my grandmother. Just because, flow is often, right, it's the difference between hip hop and rap, right? A lot of people think those two things are the same thing. Hip hop is absolutely about authenticity and storytelling. Rap is about the showmanship of your actual, your actual bars to cause a reaction, right? Like how dope you can ride a beat or how smooth the cadence is. The Flint song allowed me to do both of those at the same time, right? Because I had a true, real story to tell, but also I was able to rap. So when that piano was going, my cadence is completely different than that staccato quarter note piano, right? My rap is when I started making music with my grandma in the church, right? I'm da 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 da, while that piano is bong 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 bong, right? So it is the flow is so it's so infectious and real, and you feel it, but it's authentic of a story that had to be told. So I never ever thought I'd see my city in the hearse. It's my city, so it hurts when the place that I was birthed can't get clean water because they living in the dirt. And even worse, they knew about it, right? Like I'm telling this story of what happened, but I'm doing it in a way that really goes against the rhythm of what I'm playing. So it forces you to have to really pay attention.
So how did that song begin? What was the impetus?
So how it began was actually that's why we put that piece of the intro in the beginning. It started just like that, where I'm like, I'm sick and tired of seeing this, and no one is really taking it serious. At that time, I just felt like it's just something that they just want people to just sit and wait and just just chill. And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening. So my creative thought was, what could I say? And how could I say it? And I'm like, okay, the most authentic thing I think about this thing is that we're dealing with the water crisis and they want the people to wait. Instantly, my brain went through my catalog of music and I'm like, wait in the water. Okay. They want them to wait in the water. It's wade in the water, but that's what popped up. And I instantly thought of my grandmother because I'm like, if this is going to feel real, I have to, have her kind of give me that, right? That was an old Negro spiritual. So like, I need that real older soul to be in this. So I literally start to play the piano. Okay, I got that piece done. Now I'm making the beat on the drum machine. Now I'm calling my grandmother from Hollywood, California, and I'm like, hey, I need you to sing on this hook. Can you do it? Just over the phone. And she's like, yeah, okay, right. And she sings into, I bring the mic up and hold the phone into the mic. And then she sings. I grab her voice, I place it. So then I shape everything around her vocal and continue to add more sounds now because I start with a foundation, right? The foundation are the drums and the main melody. Once I can get vocals on there, then I can post produce and add other things because I can't really tell what's supposed to be there until a vocal is there because it needs to have the space to be free rather than be restricted. So
So how long did that process take?
that song took about that song took about 3 hours in total to finish.
That strikes me as being pretty short.
Yeah.
Is that, so, so it felt like the elements flowed. And then how long did you how long did you record your grandmother?
Literally maybe 40 seconds, 30, 35.
That was
Yeah.
it on
One
one
take.
take.
She's,
That,
again, she came from performing in the church. She's always ready at the drop of a dime. So, one call and just to have her sing, wade in the water, God's gonna make it okay. Like we talked about what the lyrics should be, and she in one take just delivered that. I recorded it in. Sometimes songs can take days or weeks or whatever it is, but when it's something like this, I can't explain it. It just it that's what flow is. When it spills, it just comes out. It just flows out of you when it's something to be said that's higher than my intellect or my skill set or my actual ability. I know that I'm moving now in a God realm because there's no way humanly I'm just I would never give myself that credit. I'm just a messenger to bring the mail to the people.
that's beautiful. So what has been the reaction to that song?
It's always received with such power. I often see people cry when they hear the record or they see the video, especially. And, it just garners that emotion and that feeling of, there's attention put toward it because it's such a great production. But then that pull on that tug on you, because it's such a serious situation and such a sad circumstance, for us to be called the United States. And then there's one place that's standing out in this way, and kind of close to a third world country. But the reception has been really great on that song, and other songs, that have done far greater than that. But for me, it wasn't about that. And I had actually just signed a record deal with RCA Records before I went to shoot that music video for Flint. And I was challenged with whether to go do something for the label or do this Flint thing. And I told them, we have to put things on hold because I'm going to the city and I got to get this done. And they're like, Joe, we don't have the budget. We don't have this and that and the third. I'm like, don't worry about it. Me and my guy are going to take a camera. We're going to go to Flint. We got it. Don't worry about it. And we got it done. So I will always have that memory that I put my city before anything else. I put what I cared about before anything else, which was ingrained in me from Flint, right? You never run away from where you remember where you come from, right? And you fight and do what's important first.
So to Flint and its flows, like, does Flint have a certain sound? Flint rap.
For sure.
And okay.
Absolutely.
Can you describe it?
Yeah. Flint's rap has always been about storytelling, right? It's always been very based in hip hop. Even if you listen to the early, some people would not deem the gangster rap from the Dayton Family and all these different things that were going on at that time, they wouldn't deem it as storytelling, but it was absolutely storytelling, because they were talking about what was going on Dayton Ave. And rapper to rapper that you hear from Flint, the sound is going to be very gritty and real and authentic. And it's really going to be about the stories of what they see and what's going on. You don't really have the flash rap, even from back then till now, right? Now the sound has changed and gotten a bit more electronic in production, whereas before it was more live. But it's always been based in storytelling and very hip hop, very grungy and gritty and just down to earth, like very, very, very true. Like it wasn't to be rap to be the dopest possible word flipper as much as it was to tell the authentic, true stories of what was going on. And either you like it, whether you like it or not, it was going to be the truth at all times. So that Flint sound is always going to be that storytelling Midwest, thing, rather than it being the commercial flow, which is very different.
And how does you mentioned the Midwest sound? How is it different from the East and the West and the South sounds?
For sure. So the East Coast is similar to the Midwest in the storytelling element of it, but it's going to have a bit more, a bit different of a dialect that leans them to bend words very differently, right? Just because of the accent that is in place in New York and Jersey and that whole side of things. The Midwest sound, of course, is always also going to be soulful. From the rap to the singing to whatever it was in the Midwest is very soulful. Down South, you're going to have more party atmosphere, right? You're going to have more experience-based rap on the external situations rather than like life situations. Midwest is going to be very life-based. Down South is going to be more experience, party-based, or an experience that I had outside of just my life, something that took me outside of reality. So strip clubs are very popular down there. The actual dance club is very popular down there. It's all about telling the good time that they had, and the beats, right, will be very simple, simplistic. Whereas a West Coast style thing will be very bass, drum and bass driven, right? Whereas very simple melodies, boom, 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 boom. That's an East Coast thing, because what's leading the way, no matter what, is just a bass line. It's not going to be all this other instrumentation that comes in. It is 100% going to be a drum and bass thing, and they just ride that. Whereas in the Midwest, we need all the instruments. We got to have the soul, right? One great example, you hear Kanye West, right? He was able to flip samples and speed them up, and they sounded different, but it was because it was based in all these different soul records, right? If you think about Nelly and how he really blew up I'm going down, down, baby. Right? As much as that he had a more of a commercial spin to it, but it's still soul. It's still, you can feel the nature of the soul that's in there. So our sound is always going to be more soulful than every other place, right? We talk about soul, Motown. I mean, the biggest, I mean, come on, like that is soul. So our sound is very soulful. Everywhere else has their different sounds, but our sound is gritty and Flint, but overall, as a Midwestern thing, it's going to be the soul that's in there.
So is that how you would characterize your music as soulful? I listen to, is it pop
Yes,
that you,
yes,
okay. So that sounds very different than your song about Flint.
yes.
So how, yeah, so how would you describe your sound or your yeah, your music?
I would say it's very soulful, very storytelling, but the last characteristic is very commercial. So in that piece, the Midwest and especially Flint may shy away from at times more than they embrace it and love it, because it's like, oh man, you sound too commercial. But once I again went through the situation in Milwaukee, I learned how important that commercial aspect was. And so whether I'm rapping with passion or I'm singing a song, the soul is still going to be wrapped in there, but I'm trying to do it in a commercial way that really causes phrases to be easily receptive and easily digestible, right? Where the phrases melodically can actually be repeated quickly rather than having to dig through, a lot of the backpack rap or underground rap. You got to really get into the intricacies of like, okay, wow, this is a lot. What are they saying? Where mine is more easy listening, soulful, digestible commercial music. So it's going to lend to a broader audience.
So I guess the opposite of non-commercial then is it more complicated, the music?
Yeah, it's going to be deeper meanings, right? Like it's not going to be so surface to just easily digest what's going on, right? It's going to be deeper. It's going to be complicated flows that might go off the beat, right? That's a very Detroit thing to rap kind of off the beat. Flint is more so on top of the beat, but the commercial thing is just easily digestible and right accessible right away, so that you have that repeat value.
So I don't know if you can you can talk like through the decades because you're a pretty young person, but can you talk about the evolution of Flint's rap sound through the decades, maybe like from the 1980s, 90s, 2000s, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, I only had, what, 5, 6 years in the 80s, but the sound, I feel like the rap sound started to develop more so in that early 90s space. In the 80s, you would have more musicians and singing, right? You had like what was the group out of Flint? Ready for the World, right? Like you had this type of organic sounding musical flow driven with of live instrumentation, all these different things. The 90s, we really started to get in what I call the boom bap of rap in Flint, where it was very much so the boom, boom, bah, boom, right? Like that sound was it was mimicking the live setting that we had come out of in the 80s, but it was starting to get into a trust of electronic, right? So now we had drum machines to try to mimic that live sound that we just came out of, but we pushed it forward by having sounds that were bigger than a live drum set. Because if I can push it down and I can add EQ to it, now it goes from boom, ba 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 to boom, ba boom, 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 right? So we got stronger in the drum side in the instrumentation, and we started to explore with electronic sound, in the 90s. In the 2000s, it pretty much stayed the same, but we got more electronic, and the flows started to be, the cadences started to change. Because if you notice, if you go back and really listen to a lot of Flint rap, you could really pinpoint it and say, oh, that's a Flint rapper, that's a Flint rapper, because it would sound the same, for just being honest. And then in the 2000s, we were really able to start experimenting with other cadences. Flint is very much a stickler about not changing the cadence and keeping it that same way. A lot of rappers sound the same, and that's why it's been a bit difficult for someone to really break outside of Flint, because it all sounds like one artist. You know, it all sounds like the same thing. So when you think about someone like MC Breed in the 90s, although he started in Flint, if you hear that Ain't No Future in Your Frontin', it's very much a West Coast beat, right? And it started to really pop in Texas, right? Like, we have to pay attention to its trajectory being based on him not staying in Flint and trying to hit Flint over the head with his different sound. He had to get out, because it'd be like, Breed, you sound like them other guys. You sound like you trying to be, right? That would be the thing. So it started to open up and get a less restricted cadence in rap in the 2000s, which I was like, thank you, Jesus, because, you know, it took a while for us to get there.
So my last question, and do you go by Joe, or do you prefer JR3, or I'm sorry, I should have asked you this.
Oh, it's all good. I mean, Joe Ryan the third, Joe, whatever it is, but I'm often conscious to make sure I say Joe Ryan the third so that they know the full name. That's what I go by, for sure.
Okay. So, Joe Ryan the third. My last question is, what are you working on now?
So right now, I developed this online business called Inspire, right? And it's spelled with these three I's up here. And what we do is, well, multiplicity of things, but we do online virtual studio sessions, right? With COVID-19 becoming this really crazy thing, it's hard for people to get into studios and figure out how to get a stellar sound outside of going to a major crazy studio. And where we are in the world is going that way anyways. If you think of the dynamic Blockbuster had on, you know, the culture, right? They were the number one everything when in terms of going to get movies and, you know, seeing your people on the weekends. Like, I know who I'm gonna see over there. And then comes along this thing, Amazon, right? That completely shifts the market and is laughed at. I was one of the haters, I ain't gonna lie, right? Where I'm like, bro, I'm not like mailing DVDs. Like, what is that? But now if you look at it, Blockbuster is obsolete. So I'm trying to think in the future rather than in the right now of like, what is the next wave? What are the things that people are going to need to push them forward? And we're seeing with the COVID, virtual is 100% the way that things are going. So we're developing this. You can check it out at inspire.org. And we do one-on-one sessions with people. I do consultations. I do executive productions, all these different things. I've even figured out a way to route people's Zoom audio, show them how to set up an interface and a microphone. I route their Zoom audio into my rig and record them as if we were in the studio together, and then I can mix it, send it back to them. You know, that's all thanks to the Flint song with my grandmother, right? Like, I learned how to do that because I had to experiment with things with her. So, and then I'm also I'm a telepictures composer. So I make music for Ellen DeGeneres, Cartoon Network, Teen Titans Go, a bunch of different shows, the Real, that talk show. I mean, a bunch of different shows that are under Warner Brothers. So I'm working on a new album right now for them. I turn in anywhere from 2 to 5 albums per year to them, and then that gets my songs on all the different all the different shows that are under that umbrella. And it's always nice to, you know, have one of my kids call me and say they're watching Teen Titans and, you know, they hear their dad. So
And do you have 5 children?
yes,
Oh
yes.
gosh. Okay. I have 4, and that's plenty. But you have so Joe Ryan the third. Such a pleasure. Um, so wonderful to hear your story. And I'm sure that we'll keep in touch, and I'll have all sorts of questions for you as I transcribe and
Sure.
yeah. So we'll keep in touch, and thank you so much for your time and for representing Flint so well.
No problem. Thank you. And can you give me a little background on what you're actually doing and what this is for and your vision and kind of?
Yeah. So I grew up in Flint. I
Okay.
graduated from Flint Powers, and I went to school and spent half my life in school. Now I'm a professor at Michigan State. Primarily, I've worked on documentary films, and my latest film that was going to be debuted last April
Mhm.
by the Detroit Free Press is called Breed and Bootleg, and it's about MC Breed and Ira Dorsey and the intersections of their relationship and the history of Flint rap in the early 1990s. But there was just so much content. And I pitched this story idea to Wayne State University Press. And
Wow.
they're like, okay, start writing. So now I'm in the interviewing and the writing process. And I hope that Flow and Flint Town, the investigations of mental and musical flow will be done by the end of the year. And the process is really long for a book. So the book may not be out until winter 2020 or 21 or spring 22. So it's
Yeah.
going to take a little while. But
Oh yeah.
yeah, so it's my first book. So
Wow.
we'll see. So that's my vision, and hopefully, the film and the book will help fill a void and rewrite the history of Flint, so that students in Madison Heights growing up can read more about our city, right?
Wow. That's fantastic because that's what we need, and that's what is going to help, help us grow and help show others our values when they see that the stories are valuable enough to be talked about and put into that place. And students more than anything need it because they are they're the next leaders. So that's really, really, really important. I thank you for doing that for the city. It's so important to impress upon students. It's why an adjunct professor over at the Los Angeles College of Music as well, because it's important to pass these things down and inform them. And for me, it's important to do that before I'm like retired and out of here, right? Like it's important to show them what's going on now and how to, monetize it right now, how to become, rather than just a music student, become a music entrepreneur and learn history. And that's what you're doing when you're telling the story of Flint and gathering this and making it valuable. So that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Well, now I just have to write it, right?
For
But this is a huge, yeah, so this is a huge step, and I will be in touch. Thank you so much.
sure. No problem. My pleasure.
See you.
All right. See you soon. See ya.